Good morning. Well, we're back again, and now we're going to finish what we started the other day. We're going to be talking about the War of 1812. And what year was that war? 1812! That's why they call it the War of 1812. Not too many people talk about it no more. You know, that war could have been a war to end everything for the U.S. United States here. Yes, the United States, it could have been done, could have been over with. Got Old Glory right here, right on my back. Always got my back. Old Glory always got my back, okay? So, let's recap a little bit what happened. Macon's Bill number 2. James Madison is president, and Macon's Bill number 2 made a deal. Whichever country, France or England, decide to respect us and would also stop attacking our ships and stop impressing our sailors, well, then we'd start trading with them, and we would not trade with the other dudes. Well, which one took it first? Which one took the deal? It was France. Remember, Napoleon? He took the deal. Now, we offered it. We offered it. Well, I should say we. It wasn't me. I wasn't part of all this, you know. I mean, I've been around, but I ain't been around that much. It was James Madison. Yes, he offered him to Britain. Take the deal. They said no. It was a while. It took a while, but in 1812, he declared war on Britain. Now, remember we talked about two ships passing? One was bringing war, and that was us. The other one was bringing peace, and that would be England. So how about that? One ship is bringing war, the other ship is bringing peace. Yeah, Britain wanted peace with us. Too late. Too late. We already said we're going to war. And we did. Yes, we did. Now, I'm going to read a lot of little things here because I got some stories to tell you, but there's just so much information. I could write a book on this. Well, I don't know if I could write the book, but somebody's written a book on it. There's just a lot of things that happened during this wartime. Okay? So listen real careful as we go through some of these things, and you might learn something. Let's see. First of all, our Army and Navy were weak. Now, you know, the British are already supplying the Indians with weapons, so we're going to have to be watching them on one side and watching the British on the other side, and we got no Army and Navy, folks. We don't. So, gotta start building up. Now, when it comes to a volunteer army, we got a lot of folks joining, like me. See, I am in a uniform today that is not a uniform. I don't know if y'all can see this or not, but I've got a weapon. Believe it or not, I'm in the militia, and they made me a colonel. I know my business when it comes to doing war. I told you I've been around a while. So I am a colonel in the Tennessee militia. Yes, I am. And with that, we joined up along with other Indians, Native Americans, African Americans, anybody you could think of. French, pirates. We're going to talk about pirates. Pirates joined us. Yeah, we had pirates that joined us too. Anybody that wanted to fight them British, because who likes the British? Come on now. No, not too many people like the British. Not I. So we only had 20 warships. What they decided to do was anybody that had a merchant ship that would be willing to let the United States borrow it and outfit it with cannons, they called them people privateers. Privateers, you understand? My cousin's a privateer. He was a privateer in the Revolutionary War, and he's a privateer now in the War of 1812 because he had some ships. Yes, he did. Down Charleston area. You know where Charleston area was? His last name, Pat. Last name was Pat. Ring a bell? Yes, it does. So these privateers, they would help to fight and keep the ports safe from the British. Ooh, it's getting windy out here, folks. I am outside, and it is turning real dark out here, but I'm going to stay here with you as long as I can until I may have to go inside. I'm not sure. All right, so the British are blockading our ports. You know what blockading means? You know what blockade means. It means it stops stopping anybody from going out, stopping anybody from coming in. Just can't have that. So that's where our privateers had to come in and try to break that blockade. Sometimes they were successful, sometimes not. And sometimes it can be very tragic for those people out there doing things like that. These weren't big ships. These were boats. There's a difference between a boat and a ship. A ship is big, a boat is not. They really can't come against ships. But anyway, there were some people like this here, Henry Clay. Henry Clay is from Kentucky, okay? Not too far from where I am. He's from Kentucky. And Henry Clay bragged that the militia down there in Kentucky could take all of Canada by themselves. Remember, they wanted to take all of Canada, and they wanted to take Florida? He said the militia in Kentucky could take all of Canada. I don't think so. I think he was really wishing high on that one, okay? You're not going to be able to take everybody up there in Canada. All the British, they're pretty entrenched up there. So there was a plan out there, all right? And his plan was this. First of all, it'd be a three-way invasion of Fort Detroit, Niagara on Lake Ontario, Fort Niagara on Lake Ontario, and Lake Champlain. Wait, let me get this straight again. I messed this up. An invasion of from Detroit, from Fort Niagara, that was on Lake Ontario, and Lake Champlain in New York. They were going to use all those areas to get in there. None of them worked. Not a one. Not a one worked. All three failed terribly. Wasn't a good plan. Just wasn't a good plan. Because the invasions from Fort Niagara and Lake Champlain were almost just unsuccessful. The American forces, when state militias refused to help on outside of their states, you see, state militias sometimes they just don't help everybody else. Now, Tennessee, we're helping everybody. I'm every place. I'm in Virginia. I'm in North Carolina. I'll go any place they tell me to go. I'll go to New York if I have to. I don't really want to go to Canada, though. It didn't work out too well. But in any case, they were trying to get men to join up for 3 to 6 months. All these forts, even Fort Dearborn, which is present-day Chicago, none of it worked. We could not dislodge them. We could not dislodge them. So, in the sea, maybe that would be a victory. You see, the people of the United States, they need a victory. We're losing, folks. We were losing this war. Britain came. They came with everything they got. They already know how we fought last time, and they knew our weaknesses. Where's George Washington? He's gone. He's gone. There's no more George Washington. So, here we go. Now, there was the USS Constitution. It was a ship, okay? The USS Constitution. Let me tell you a little bit about it. During 1812, August 1812, the USS Constitution came against a ship called the Guerriere. It was a British ship. Now, the Constitution was captained by Isaac Hall. I don't think I've talked about Isaac Hall enough. Isaac Hall was captain of the Constitution. It was built in 1797. The whole boat on the bottom was made of white oak. Remember that now. White oak. It's pretty hard. You can't just drive a nail through white oak. You best drill it first. During a fierce battle, as the British were firing cannon on the USS Constitution, you'll never realize what happened. The cannonballs just fell right off the ship. They bounced off the ship. They bounced off the hull. You understand? The British could not understand why the cannonballs were not going through. Maybe they just weren't close enough. Well, even if they were, there was something about that white oak. It was hard. The Constitution won, folks. They won big. Yes, they did. The ship was so strong, even the British, they nicknamed it Old Ironsides. Old Ironsides. Now, I do have a little model of it. You want to see it? You want to see what this ship looked like? You won't believe it. Here she is right here. White oak, right here. White oak. Let me get real close. Can you see that? Can you see it? Look at all them sails. Somebody made me this, and I'm glad they did because now I can show it to you. This is a little scale model of the USS Constitution, which is now called what? Old Ironsides. And I'm going to tell you what, it still exists. It is the oldest ship still in commission for the U.S. Navy. It still exists, and it still floats, and they still take it out. I think once or twice a year. You look that up. So there you have it. We have a victory. It was a good morale booster, but we needed something more. So there would be. Oliver Hazard Perry. Remember this name? Oliver Hazard Perry. Now, he was a young naval officer, and he would assemble a small fleet of 10 ships, very small ships, and they would attack British ships in Lake Erie. I got to get a sip of something on that. You're going against big British warships with 10 little ships? That takes a lot of guts right there. It sure does. So let me tell you a little bit of a story on this. He won a great victory there in a place called Put-in Bay on September 10th, 1813, against the Captain Robert Barclay. Okay? The battle opened up a way for William Henry Harrison to retake Fort Detroit and defeat British General Proctor and the Indian forces. Guess where? Battle of the Thames, October 5th. Oliver Hazard Perry had a famous quote. So listen to this quote he says. He said, "We have seen the enemy, and they are ours." It was a great victory for America that day again. Great victory and a much-needed morale booster. I'll drink to that. We just might win this thing. We still got a long way to go. It's only 1813. Now, I'm going on. I'm just rolling along with this because I don't want to make this too long for you so you get bored with it. April 1813, United States troops, they go up into Canada, where we call today Toronto. Okay, have you ever been to Toronto? The capital city there was York. It's called York. Now, some of our boys, they got a little rambunctious. They burned a lot of buildings down there. Yes, they did. A lot of buildings that didn't need to be burned, they burned them down anyway. British are going to remember that. They just destroyed things. They probably shouldn't have done it, but they did. So there was a little bit of a victory there. And then the Battle of the Thames was October 5th, 1813. William Henry Harrison against General Proctor and the Indians under control of, guess who? Tecumseh. We talked about Tecumseh. 600 British regulars, 1,000 Native Americans. Tecumseh's killed, and most all the Native Americans, they skedaddled. Once Tecumseh was killed, they left. A lot of people killed that day. Yes. See, they thought they would trap William Henry Harrison and his troops, but instead he turned his cannons towards the woods. Right there. Blew the smithereens out of those woods and exposed the Indians that were there. It was one dreadful fight. It really was. What happened to the British? Well, they took off. They took off. Yes, they did. Doesn't say a whole lot for them, does it? But William Henry Harrison had 3,000 men. He had a lot of men. He outnumbered them almost 3-1. Almost. Now, Great Britain and their allies are eventually going to defeat Napoleon at a place called Waterloo in Belgium. But that won't be until June of 1815. So they're still fighting over there a little bit, but they got enough that they can bring some men over this way. So a lot of things are happening within a couple years of themselves, okay? 1813, 1814, 1815. Those are 3 main years that we're still going to be fighting on this war. So what's going to happen? Well, in August of 1814, August 24th, 1814, 6,000 British soldiers are marching into Washington. Into Washington, D.C., folks. Right there. We don't have that many men to protect Washington, D.C. President Madison, what's he going to do? Well, he put about 1,000 Americans, mostly militia, to try to stop them. That's not going to work. It's just not going to work, okay? So let me tell you again, 6,000 British forces, 6,000 against 1,000 of us. Wow, that's something. Now, Madison goes out and joins the militia. He does. This guy's only 5'4", 100 pounds now, but he got some guts. I got to give it to the president. He's a man of my own heart right there. And he goes out and joins the militia, tells his wife, Dolly, I'll be back. When I come back, we got to get out of here. Now, the Congress, they already left. Most of the people did leave. Most of the important papers, things that we needed, was gone. Okay? They took it. They left it. Important things put in saddlebags, wagons, they left. It's a good thing they did. Well, guess what? President Madison didn't come back right away. And his wife, Dolly, well, she went on the rooftop and was looking out spyglass, looking for him. She goes, I am not leaving until I know my husband is safe. She even had a dinner made for him. He'd never come back. Word came to her that he was safe and she needed to get out. She wasn't going to leave, folks. Dolly was not going to leave. She despised them British. Yes, she did. But she saw them coming into the city and knew it was time to go. So let me read a little bit about this, because this is a good story here. Dolly was on the roof of the spyglass. She told her servants if she was a man, she would have put a cannon in every single window of that there White House and wait for them British to come and just blow them to smithereens. Well, that didn't happen. Now, at the White House, Dolly packed a wagon, the red silk velvet drapes of the Oval Room, silver service, and a blue and gold china set that she had purchased for the state dining room. She's taking that with her. Nobody's getting her china, right? She also noticed that there was a picture of George Washington painted by Gilbert Stuart, the one he's standing there with the sword in his drawing room there with all on the table with all the books laying around. She could not abandon this to the enemy, she said, to be mocked and desecrated. She wasn't going to leave that picture there. And her servants are saying, Miss Madison, you have to go. We got to go. The British are coming here. She ordered the servants to take down that picture before she was going to go. It was screwed tight to the wall. They could not get it down. They did not have the proper tools to unscrew it at this time. And she said, break the frame and take the picture down. They did. Now, that frame was probably expensive, but at the peril of her life, she said, break that frame and take that picture down. And they did. They rolled it up. She headed out the door. Yes, she did. Told everybody, let's go. Roll it up. We're going out. She headed out the door. She noticed, from her grandniece was telling us this now, she noticed there was a copy of the Declaration of Independence in a display case there. Opened the display case, took that out, and took that with her. She saved that paper. She saved it, an original copy of the Declaration of Independence. The original one was long gone. But an original copy, they only made 250 of them. She took it with her. And we got it today. Yes, we do. We do got it today. Along with the Constitution. Because they saved all them papers. And we got that picture too. getting exciting. There's a couple more things to tell you, though. Now listen here. The British do come into the city. Well, they come in the city, and they remember that there what happened at York. You talking about burning all them buildings down? Remember I told you about that? Well, listen to this now. Admiral George Cockburn, leader of the British forces, seized Washington, D.C., sat in the speaker's chair. You know who the speaker was? Henry Clay. Henry Clay was the speaker, the one that said he could take the militia of Kentucky and take all the forces up there in Canada. Now, so they sat in his chair. You understand? And he asked his officers, he says, "Gentlemen, the question is, shall this harbor of Yankee democracy be burned? All in favor say aye." And they all said, "Aye." And they burn it down. They burn it down now, the Capitol. They burn it down. They went into the White House and he saw there was a chicken dinner there. And it was made for the president. Of course, everybody left in a hurry. They all sat down and they had dinner. And they burned the White House down. They burned it down. Now, it didn't burn to the ground because it's made of stone, you understand? So all the insides that was made of wood, gone. All was left was walls standing up. No roof, just walls with holes for windows. They burned it down. So next time you look at that White House, you got to realize this was burned down one time. And so was the Capitol and a lot of other buildings that were in Washington. They took revenge. They took revenge for what happened in York. But listen to this story now. This isn't the story that you're going to get in them there history books. We saw it happen. As the British were bedding down for the night, a violent storm came about. Violent storm. A hurricane was coming on. This is in Washington, D.C. Rains, winds, lightning. And the British were afraid. They said they'd never seen a storm like that. And if it wasn't bad enough, guess what else happened? A tornado. A tornado. A tornado. At the same time, a hurricane? Never happened before. It was so powerful, it put most of the fires out. And it chased the British right out of Washington. They were afraid, folks. They were afraid. And a lot of them even exclaimed, "This is the doings of God. God did this." Remember George Washington? He was a godly man. And he prayed that we'd have peace here. Well, there'll be peace when the British are gone. They left because of that storm. You look it up. Somebody had to have written it down by now. So, I'm getting close to the end. Yes, I am. If you can hold on just a little bit longer, I'm kind of rushing through it, but, you know, time is precious. Now, on September 13th, 1814, the British celebrated the burning of Washington, and they moved to attack in a different way up through Baltimore, through the harbor. Now, you could write a book. There's some books already written about this attack alone and how it happened. But they were coming in Baltimore Harbor. They knew they were coming, and we had a fort out there called Fort McHenry. Fort McHenry, right on the cusp of where Baltimore Harbor is, to protect the harbor. Men sacrificed their own ships, took them out there, sunk them to block that harbor so the British couldn't get through. People scurrying all over the city with any kind of weapon they had in their hands. A lot of them coming to Fort McHenry, a lot of them lining up wherever they could. And I'm talking all kinds of people. I told you, Indians, regular folk, militia, black folk, everybody protecting that city from the British coming. The ships were coming in. Yes, they were. The ships were coming in. Now, there was a man named Francis Scott Key. Remember this name? Francis Scott Key. He was a Washington lawyer, and him and a friend of his, they go out into this harbor onto a prison ship that they had somebody out there that was taken, and they were trying to negotiate his release. Well, they were going to get his release. Then all of a sudden, they stopped him from getting back in that little rowboat and going back. They said, "Why can't we go? You're held prisoner here until after this battle." There's going to be a battle. Before he knew it, there was warships all around him. Francis Scott Key got a front row seat to this battle. He thought, "Oh my goodness, they're going to destroy Baltimore, and they're going to land, and the troops are going to walk right in." That's what he thought. So as he watched this, there was a bombardment for 25 hours. 25 hours. The British ships, they started firing them guns. Fort McHenry started firing back. They had lots of cannons there. Everything from a 9-pounder to a 32-pounder. Big as this. Now, a lot of them had fuses on them. You might think, what kind of fuses would you have? Inside that cannonball unscrews. You understand? And inside that cannonball is full of gunpowder, of course, packed with metal shards and metal balls. And when that explodes, boom, everybody goes down, folks. Everyone. Now, what about that timer? That timer screws in. It's got 2 little holes on top, okay? It depends on which one you prick down there that allows that spark to go inside there. Could be a 5-second fuse, could be a 10-second fuse. It could blow up in the air, it could blow up after it's already rolled on the ship. All depends on what they want to do. The British had the same kind. They were firing back. Some of them didn't go off. And you know what we did? Once we knew they were kind of a dud, they put them right back in our can and shot them right back to them. They shot them back. Yes, they did. Whew, boy. That took a lot of guts right there, too. Now, they had, in this fort, they had little ammunition dumps, and they had people they called powder monkeys that would go in there, because I've been there. It's small. It's real small. Big old Zeke, I don't think, could crawl inside there. But they had these powder monkeys going in there, getting powder and bringing it out, gunpowder now, and they was hoping that them British cannonballs wouldn't hit one of those ammunition dumps, or else, boom, it's going up. It's going up. Now, a couple cannons were hit. We were hit. And the one that was in charge of that fort was Major Armistead. Major Armistead had a big old flag made. Big flag. And he raised that flag up, made sure everybody could see it. Make sure the British could see it. That flag was big, folks. The British saw it, and so did Francis Scott Key. Because as he was on that ship, he took an envelope and he started writing down a poem. A few lines of what he's singing. That poem would eventually become the national anthem of the United States of America, but not until 1931. Does anybody know how it goes? Well, you know we're going to have to say it now, because I want to explain it a little bit to you so you understand. All right, let's read it. He wrote, "Oh, say can you see by the dawn's early light." By the dawn's early light. He saw everything that was happening. "What so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming." So it was just at the end of darkness, and the dawn was coming up. "Whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight," right here, stars, stripes, through the perilous fight. "For the ramparts we watched," ramparts, that's where the cannons are, where the ramparts are, "were so gallantly streaming." They was firing. That's what it meant by streaming. Have you ever seen a cannon go off at night? There is a line of fire coming out of that cannon. That's what he was saying. The cannons were streaming. And the rockets' red glare. Bombs bursting in air. There was rockets? Yes, there was. Big rockets. And when they fired them, off they went, streaming in the air like fireworks. Some of them hit, some of them didn't. You can't control those things. You just aim them, light them up, and let them go. They were streaming all through the air. Imagine all these British ships firing on that one fort and firing on the city of Baltimore. And the bombs bursting in air and people yelling and screaming. But listen to the end part. It's the best. It gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Yes, it was. It was still there when he saw everything clear out and the sun come up. That flag, folks, was still there. Oh, say it is that Star-Spangled Banner yet wave, or the land of the free and the home of the brave. That is some great words. It's what he saw. It's exactly what he saw. Now, Armistead raised a bigger flag after that up so everybody could see it. And when the smoke cleared, Francis Scott Key thought, is this it? Is it over with? And all of a sudden he saw that flag coming up the pole and it was raised. This flag, folks. This flag. Stand proud for this flag. Men died for this flag. We don't burn this flag. We don't step on this flag. We revere the flag for the men and women that die for that flag, even today. Francis Scott Key knew that. Yes, he did. And he wrote that song. And guess what he saw? The British ships started to turn and go away. He could hear the yelling and screaming and just cheering all the way from Fort McHenry because the British lost. And we won. We won. They're not coming into Baltimore. They can't make it. Now, here's a little future note. Listen to this now. This is another story you won't hear in the history books, but it has something to do with Francis Scott Key. Actually, his grandson, okay? His grandson, born in 1826, quite a few years after this, was Francis Key Howard was his name. Francis Key Howard. He was the grandson of Francis Scott Key and also the Revolutionary War Colonel John Howard. Howard was an editor of the Baltimore Exchange. Isn't that coincidental? He was a Baltimore newspaper sympathetic to the Southern cause in another war that would happen in 1861. He was arrested on September 3rd, 1861 by U.S. Major General Nathaniel Prentice Banks. He was arrested on the direct orders of General George B. McClellan of the Union Army, folks, enforcing the policy of President Abraham Lincoln. Abraham Lincoln. The basis for his arrest, now listen to this, was for writing a critical editorial in his newspaper of Lincoln's suspension of the writ of habeas corpus. He suspended habeas corpus, which means when they arrest you, you're supposed to tell you why you're arrested so you can get out sooner enough. He suspended that. You weren't allowed to have lawyers. He arrested about 30,000 people in the North. I think that goes against the First Amendment. And I think this here goes against the First Amendment, freedom of the press. Remember the Kentucky and Virginia resolutions we talked about with Madison and Jefferson? Same things happen all over again. But this is 1861. Now listen to this. And the fact also that Lincoln's administration had declared martial law in Baltimore and imprisoned without due process without due process. George William Brown, the mayor of Baltimore, Congressman Henry May, the police commissioners of Baltimore, and the entire city council were all arrested. They were all arrested. Howard was initially confined to Fort McHenry, the same fort that we just got done talking about, that his grandfather wrote the Star-Spangled Banner about. And they put him in prison there because during 1861, that fort would become a prison camp mostly for Confederate soldiers and officers and anybody else that would come against the President of the United States in word or in print. In his case, it was in print. Now, eventually he was transferred to Fort Lafayette in lower New York Bay off the coast of Brooklyn, and then to Fort Warren in Boston. Eventually he'd be released. Imagine that? Can you even imagine that? But it all happened. That's all to come. Believe me, it's all to come. There's a lot of things in history that we just don't know about, but unless somebody tells you, you got to learn it. So let's go on to the very end of this, and we'll finish this war. The Battle of New Orleans. Now, there's a man called Andrew Jackson. You don't want to mess with Andrew Jackson. General Andrew Jackson, all right? Started off leading the militia, and now you know what? He's leading the U.S. troops. And they're down in New Orleans. Now, he did all kind of things, but I'm not going to get into them right now, but I'm going to get into what he did in New Orleans. That was another way that the British were going to come in. And sure enough, they did. They did come in New Orleans, but old Andy Jackson, he was ready. You know what they called him? Old Hickory. Why? Because hickory is a hard wood. It is hard. And that's how he was. You didn't mess with him. His no was no and his yes was yes. And if you went against him, whoo, God help you. God help you. I'm telling you. He was not somebody to be reckoned with. No. So let me tell you. January 8th, 1815. This is towards the end now. This is the end. General Andrew Jackson and his sharpshooters from, guess where? You got it. Tennessee. From Tennessee. Hey, us boys, we know how to shoot. And what we shoot at, we hit. Okay? They met the British troops in New Orleans. Now, there's a couple of funny stories about that. These boys were hiding behind big bales of cotton. Did you ever see a bale of cotton? It's huge. They were hiding behind that. Is it good to hide behind cotton when you're getting shot at? Yet the bullet goes in, it gets stuck. Good thing to do. So when these boys would fire, they were going to hit. Now, we had roughly 5,000 militia, all different types of people again, you understand? Native Americans, American troops against 11,000 British. 11,000. We were outnumbered. We were outnumbered. I'm going to tell you a little story after all this is over with. Jackson's men would go up against 8,000 of them there British. And his men killed a lot of them. Yes, they did. Those sharpshooters were tough, and they did not retreat. So in the final tally, we had British casualties, which means dead, wounded, or missing. 2,035. 2,035. The American casualties, 101. 101. That's it. Now, here's somebody that was real interesting that helped Andrew Jackson. His name was Jean Lafitte. And Jean Lafitte was a pirate. He was a French pirate. He did a lot of things that he probably shouldn't have done. But along with his brother Peter Lafitte, they operated something called the Kingdom of Barashia. All right? Along coastal Louisiana, down the Creole area, okay? In the early 1800s. He used a blacksmith shop as a front operation. What actually they were doing was illegally smuggling slaves and outfitting stolen slaves and goods with sea ships that they had taken the goods from. So they were taking things from ships, They had a slave operation going. They were sailing into the Caribbean and New Mexico. They're pirates, folks. They were stealing everything they could get their hands on. They had weapons, and they had ammunition, and they had gunpowder, and Jackson made a deal with them. We need them things. We need those things. Well, what kind of deal could he make? Money? There was a little bit of money. But here was the main deal. Lafitte was wanted by the United States government, and so was his brother. And he said, if I supply you with all these supplies that you need and we help you fight, can I get a pardon? Can I go free? Jackson said, yes, you got my word on it. And when he gave his word was his bond. And so they did. Now, there's no real direct evidence that Lafitte himself fought. Some people said he did. A lot of people said he didn't. But his men did. His men did fight. And Jackson did get all the supplies from Lafitte. So he came through with it. And guess what? The pardon came through it too. He got pardoned. Now listen to this now. After helping with the War of 1812, Lafitte pardoned with Andrew Jackson. And he became a hero. Folk legend down there. But law abiding was not to his liking. No, he wasn't. He left the city to found a community of smugglers in Galveston, Texas, and a new base for privateering for his operations, okay? Illegal operations. He turned to the Yucatan and was never heard of again until after the middle 1820s. But that's not until his journal surfaced. Now, here's a juicy story. Listen to this, because you're not going to hear this nowhere else. Uncanny, authentic looking on genuine century-old paper and written by a person who knew all the players. It surfaced in 1940s. Its author had it in for the Spanish, mentioned all the right people, and had the right signature. He also spelled the name correctly, Lafitte, with 2 F's and 1 T. Lafitte had lived supposedly until the 1850s, and he died as a prosperous middle-class citizen with traceable posterity. In other words, he had kids that lived on afterwards. Lots of relatives. The journal turned up in family papers in a trunk that was inherited by a descendant of Lafitte. How about that? You ever hear something like that before? Holy smoly. You never hear something like that. All right, last part. I know we're getting down to the wire here, but I love telling stories. I love telling stories. If you want to break this up, it's okay. Now, there was a couple states in New England. Matter of fact, many people in New England had been opposed to this war because they were losing a lot of money on trade. And guess who they were trading with? The British. Yes, they were trading with the British. And they wanted this war to end so they could make some more money. So they were mostly Federalists. Here's what they saw: that the war would ruin their economy. So from December 15th, 1814 to January 1815, they met in Connecticut, and it was called the Hartford Convention. Can you remember that? Hartford Convention. They talked about New England seceding or leaving the United States. And they were going to bring a message to President Madison about them leaving the United States. They were going to secede. Nobody said anything about it. They didn't care. You want to go? Go ahead. It was okay for them to secede. You know why? Because it's in the Constitution. That's why. 10th Amendment talks about it. So they were going to leave. Well, what happened was the war was already over. When Jackson was fighting down there in New Orleans against the British, neither side, Jackson or the British, knew the war was over for 2 weeks already. Wait a second. You mean men died for nothing? No, they didn't die for nothing. They were doing their duty. They were defending what they had to, and they were also, the British were attacking like they were told to do. They were following orders. Shameful thing was the war had been over for 2 weeks. Nobody told them. Nobody told them. Message didn't get through. Battle was already won. So now, these people up in New England, once they were going to turn their papers into Madison, it was already over. Because the Treaty of Ghent, G-H-E-N-T, ended the War of 1812, signed on Christmas Eve, 1814. It ended the fighting. It ended it. So these people in New England thought, well, no use leaving now. We'll just stay. Nothing more was ever said about it. Nothing more was ever said. But they would try to leave the United States again when Missouri and Kansas was coming in as a state. They were going to leave again. When Texas was coming in, they might have thought about leaving again. How could they just all of a sudden want to leave all the time? More times than you think, New England wanted to leave these here United States. And nobody stopped them. Nobody was going to stop them. They weren't going to send troops up there to stop them because it's constitutional at that time to do it. So listen here. The war ended. It didn't solve nothing. Nobody gained any more property. Nobody gained any more territory. What happened? American ships were still being raided, and sailors were still being pressed by the British after this war. Neither side lost or gained any land, but Americans did get something. They got that sense of patriotism. Yes, they did. We'll do it again. And if y'all come back here with that Union Jack, we'll knock it down just like we did last 2 times. Think the British are done? Do you think they're done? They ain't done yet. I don't know if they're ever going to be done. If they could take it here today, they would want to take it today. But it ain't going to happen. Eventually, in history, it's going to be the United States of America that's going to save their bacon more than one time. More than one time, folks. Because you looking at me here right now, you got to understand something. We live in the greatest nation of the world. Yes, we do. Greatest nation of the world. And I am proud to be part of it. Are you? I'm proud to be part of this right here. It's important. It's important that you know that. You are an American. You can be any color that you want to. You can be any religion that you want to. But first of all, you're an American. That's what you are. Be proud of it. I am. So let's see if there's anything left to tell you. No, there isn't. I could tell you a lot more, but I'm already at 48 minutes. And I've told you enough stories. So I hope this whets your appetite a little bit to go out there and find some books on these things that interest you. Could be the Battle of Baltimore. Could be the Battle of New Orleans. Whatever gets you interested. The main thing is they got things out there called books. Go and get yourself one. So as I leave you today, we're going to start something new next time. A whole new chapter in this here America. Yes, we are. Are they going to rebuild Washington, D.C.? Bet they are. Better than it was before. Yes, they will. So be kind to people today. Tell somebody that you love them. Would you do that for me today? Do it for yourself, not for just old Zeke. Hey, this is your friend old Zeke here, just telling you stories. And I'll see you next time. Bye.